In other news, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is meeting Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in Beijing to resume talks on the two countries' decades-long border dispute. The 23rd Special Representatives' talks are underway in Beijing, where the officials are expected to discuss a wide range of issues to rebuild bilateral ties. This follows an October 21st agreement of disengagement and patrolling in eastern Ladakh. China yesterday said it is ready to work with India to enhance mutual trust through dialogue and manage differences. China and India share a 3,500-kilometer long border and have in the past accused each other of trying to seize territory along their unofficial divide known as the Line of Actual Control. Meanwhile, China is reportedly building villages near another disputed border region with Bhutan, close to the Doklam Plateau. Now, according to an Indian media report, satellite data shows at least 22 settlements built in traditionally Bhutanese territory over 8 years, with 8 emerging since 2020 near the strategic plateau. And for more, Neha Poonia joins us live now from New Delhi. Now, Neha, Indian media reports say that China is building villages near the Doklam in Bhutan. That's another disputed border region with India. What kind of concern is this raising in New Delhi?
Well, we've not heard from the government yet, and it's quite unlikely that the government will comment right away. But experts and China watchers have expressed alarm over this report in the Hindustan Times, which has analyzed satellite data over the last 8 years to claim that 22 settlements and villages have come up in this disputed region between Bhutan and China. And that about 8 of these villages have come up in the last 5 years since that border standoff between India and China started playing out in the eastern Ladakh region that the two countries both stake claim over. Now, we have seen this report also claim that there's been significant activity by the Chinese side in this region, which is traditionally claimed by Bhutan, and that there's also been, land grabbing by the Chinese side of up to 2% of Bhutanese territory. Of course, China and India have both not commented on this, but this was also the site of a 2017 standoff, like you said. Back then, you had Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping hold talks to resolve that standoff. But the reason why New Delhi is worried is because this Doklam Plateau is a very strategic location. It overlooks and is very close to this narrow strip of land that connects the Indian mainland to its northeastern regions and states. And any Chinese activity in this region has always worried India as well as Bhutan. And many scholars are comparing China's actions here with China's actions in the South China Sea as well, and asking New Delhi to be very, very alert.
Now, Neha, this reported development comes as officials from both India and China are meeting to discuss the line of actual control. What do we know about the outcome of these talks?
Well, these talks, we are being told, are still underway. And, this is significant because it's the first such engagement that's taken place in 5 years. The last time this group met was in 2019, much before the 2020 standoff between India and China started. And since then, there's been no meeting between the special border representatives. India is being represented by its national security advisor, Ajit Doval, and he's meeting China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. And we will likely have a readout of this meeting in the next few days. But from India's side, they're saying that their aim is very clear, that this is a way to continue engaging with Beijing to try and build trust. All of this taking place against the backdrop of that meeting that took place between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi at the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Russia. And both leaders had then deputed their special border representatives to hold talks and build on the discussion that the two leaders had to try and disengage militarily. We've seen how both sides have started holding joint patrols, but India has been very, very clear that for there to be any sort of equilibrium between both neighbors, there needs to be trust that needs to be built, and that both sides need to stick to previous border agreements as well. And from India's perspective, this meeting is going to try and focus on that, to try and find a long-term solution to ensure these border skirmishes and disputes don't happen again and again.
Neha, thank you so much for that update. That was Neha Poonia reporting live from New Delhi. Now, earlier, CNA's Olivia Seong discussed the significance of the India-China talks this time around with Kanti Bajpai, who is a Vice Dean of Research and Development at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy.
We can look at it from on two fronts. One, there is the economic front between China and India. China is India's largest trading partner, while they cooperate, especially on trade. And China, while it has been angered by actions taken by India since the 2020 clash, including increased scrutiny on Chinese investments and businesses, also the cutting of direct flights between the two countries, banning of Chinese apps. At one point, India was also talking about a ban on visas for Chinese nationals. All of this has added to the tensions. But we do know that China is focused very much on its economic recovery, and so having good relations with India would help it certainly with that. On another front, there is the diplomatic front, the image of China in the world in the face of increased international scrutiny, especially from the West. Not too long ago, we heard from the Foreign Minister Wang Yi saying that China is having more trust and less suspicion with major countries in the region, specifically naming what it has done to improve relations with India. And so, Prof, we know that these talks aren't expected to be the end of this ongoing dispute. But do you think from here we may see India relax some of its rhetoric or some of the measures it has taken against China, some lower hanging fruit perhaps?
Well, I think it's quite instructive that Mr. Modi himself, despite the Galwan clash, has never criticized Xi Jinping in public. And that continues to be the case. So there's been restraint there. On an issue that India frequently criticized China some years ago, which was the Belt and Road Initiative of China, India has again stopped criticizing it in public. That's another sign of the kind of restraint that India is showing. On the border itself, on the Galwan clash of 2020, India had said that it will not resume any kind of normalization until Chinese troops withdraw, and that they would have to go back to the precise spots from which they made the ingress. That too seems to be softened. I mean, there seems to be evidence that despite these withdrawals that have taken place in the last few weeks, there is not quite a withdrawal by China and India back to original positions. And they've seen fit to create a buffer zone, which the Chinese were pushing, which India was a bit uncomfortable with, but which India seems to have now accepted. So I think that, there are a number of ways in which India has softened its position. Looking ahead, I don't see a breakthrough on the border, least of all in these talks, which are very symbolic.